What are Sarms? How do they work? Are they going to help you to build bigger muscles? Are they safe? Are they better than or worse than anabolic steroids? Well, my name's AD West and welcome to the Nordic Labs YouTube channel. And in today's video, we're going to be going over everything that you need to know about Sarms. Plus, we're going to tell you what we think the best stack is for a beginner's Sarms cycle. So let's get into it. Welcome to the Nordic Labs YouTube channel, and today's video is the first of many that's going through all the different supplements that Nordic Labs produces, but also educating you and helping you to understand how they work. Now, today's video is a brief overview on a selection of supplements called Sarms. Now, we will be talking about supplements that aren't Sarms as well, but just generally because they're sold as Sarms. But today's video is going to be an overview. But before we get into it, just remember I'm not a doctor, so I don't advise you to take or not take anything that we discuss in these videos. These videos are purely for your entertainment purposes only, and what you choose to do, the knowledge that you've attained by watching these videos, is completely up to you. Now we've got that out of the way, let's get into it. So Sarms, they are selective androgen receptor modulators. And what that means is they selectively bind to the androgen receptors in your bones and muscles. Now, if we compare that to something like an anabolic steroid, sometimes anabolic steroids, they go in and they bind to lots of different things, and that's why you get your side effects. Some of those side effects could be good side effects, such as increased sex drive, and some of those side effects could be negative side effects, such as reduced testosterone, higher bad cholesterol levels, and things like that. So obviously the point of Sarms is to treat the medical conditions that were traditionally treated by anabolic steroids, but to treat them using something that's a lot more easier to control in the body. So they're not just going in and doing what they want, but they're specifically binding to the receptors that we want them to bind to. So in medicine, Sarms are being researched for patients who have got muscle wastage diseases, so something like osteoporosis, where the bones and muscles waste away over time. Then traditionally they would have been put on anabolic steroids, probably a tablet form, so they could only run it for a certain amount of time. But because osteoporosis is very common in women, then these anabolic steroid treatments are obviously going to have some negative side effects that women don't really want to have, such as virilization. Now, if you don't know what that is, briefly, that means it's going to force women into a male type of puberty. So they're going to get deeper voices, they're going to get hair in places that they wouldn't expect to get hair, such as on the face. And obviously it's going to affect the body, and the body's going to start changing in ways that they may like, but also they may not like. So obviously they might become stronger, they might get bigger muscles, but also they're going to start to develop manly features. So with Sarms, such as Austrine is one of the most popular and one of the most researched Sarms. And Austrine was developed to treat osteoporosis. Now, the benefit of Austrine over something like Anavar or any other sort of anabolic steroid is that it's not going to give a woman male-like features. It's not going to push them into a male style puberty. You know, it's not going to change their body in too many ways. Plus, it could be run longer than most traditional anabolic steroids, and it can be ran more frequently. So you could go on it and then you could come off it for a while and then you could go back on it. So Sarms have a good application in the medical field, and therefore that's why a lot of pharmaceutical companies are getting excited about it. That's why there's loads of research being done on them. But also that does work in the world of bodybuilding. So yes, if they're going to stop your muscles from wasting away, which is their primary purpose, what that actually means is it's going to make your body more anabolic. So if you don't have one of these muscle wastage diseases, they're going to help you to build bigger muscles quicker. So that's going to be their main application for bodybuilders. It's building lean muscle mass whilst avoiding the side effects that you get from anabolic steroids. But that doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be no side effects with Sarms. It just means they're going to be reduced. And obviously all Sarms are different, which makes it complicated. So the questions we get asked a lot is, do Sarms cause side effects, or what are the side effects that you're going to get from Sarms? Well, in order to answer that, you're going to have to watch specific videos on specific Sarms, because they are all different. So Austrine is classed sort of more of a beginner's Sarm. It's really good. It's not that it's weak, but there are stronger Sarms out there. You could say there's probably no side effects associated with it, or at least most people who take it aren't going to experience any of the side effects that's associated with taking it. But then, for example, if you look at Rad 140 here, well, Rad 140, you are more likely to experience side effects. So there's a big difference. Now, I get asked a lot, what is the difference between liquid and capsule form Sarms? So capsule form Sarms are, tablet form. So it's a powder in a tablet. And liquid Sarms is literally that same powder, but it's suspended in a liquid. So you do need to shake them up before you take them, and they do taste disgusting as well. The difference is really that it does cost more to produce the tablet form Sarms that we have here. This is a Rad 140 there, and we've also got Rad 150, which we'll do a video on. Now, it's a lot more expensive to create the individual tablets, but it does mean that you're going to get a consistent dose. When you're taking the liquid form ones, it's down to you to shake it. They can also, and I've seen this a lot, because they sit around in warehouses and on shops shelves for a long time, they can actually crystallize at the bottom, so you can't really mix it up properly. So if 10% of that powder, the active ingredient, is stuck to the bottom, then obviously when you're dosing your liquid Sarms, whatever it is that you're taking is going to be less than what it says on the side of the bottle, because it's not all dissolved. So the best way to ensure that you're getting a consistent dose is to look for a tablet form Sarm, such as the Nordic Lab Sarms. They're all tablet forms, and they are all produced using high-end machinery that can perfectly weigh out and measure a consistent dose, so that you know that the dose from the first tablet all the way down to the last tablet is going to be exactly the same, and you're going to get the results that you wanted. Whereas when you take liquid form Sarms, although they are very similar, if it's not mixing properly, you could get a higher dose in one go, and then the next day it could be lower. Or if it's stuck to the bottom, then all of your dosages are going to be lower. So from my experience for making these videos for the past 8 years and working for supplements brands, liquid form of anything, it's still good, but it's not optimal. You're going to get the best results from tablets. But if you look at it just from the point of view of some average dude who's got them, if you want to go on holiday, you can just take a couple of tablets, put them in a vitamins tub or whatever. You could just put this in a vitamins tub if you live with your missus or your parents or whatever, and they wouldn't know what it was. But when it comes down to a liquid tincture, it's very difficult to take it abroad. It's very difficult to take it on trips. And let's say you took it on holiday and you drop the bottle, that's all of the liquid gone. If it smashes on the floor, it's all gone, not just a little bit. Whereas if you drop these on the floor, if you're confident that, let's say the floor's clean, you could just put them back in the bottle. I'm not advising you to do that or not to do that. That's up to you. But also, if you're going away for 2 days, you could just take enough tablets for 2 dosages away with you on holiday. So just bear in mind that it's going to be a lot easier if you get the tablet form. Can females run Sarms? Well, it depends on the Sarm, and we'll go through each one in detail and explain the dosages both for male and female. And also we'll do a full video going through all the different Sarms that are recommended for females as well. But generally I would say Austrine's a good place to start if you are female and you're looking at Sarms. So Austrine is MK2866. We'll talk about that slightly later on in the video. But it's definitely a Sarm that women can take, and you generally take half the dose of the guys. Unless advised something different, but generally speaking, they are run at half the dose of the guys. And sometimes what we do, especially for smaller girls, is maybe start on quarter of the dose, see how you get on, and then bump it up to half, because obviously we're all different, and the smaller you are, obviously, you know, it's like if you drank a whole bottle of vodka and you're 7 foot compared to drinking a whole bottle of vodka and you're 4 foot, you know, it's going to have a massive difference in the effects. So it's not just sex differences, but it's also height and weight as well. So if you are looking to do a Sarms cycle, here's a couple of things that you might need to know before running a Sarms cycle. Now, you will be surprised maybe by this, but when I worked in supplement shops, and obviously I've been doing videos like this across all the social media platforms for years, for about 8 years now. And one of the most popular questions I get asked is, do I need to go to the gym if I'm doing this? So the answer is, of course, yes. So if you are taking Sarms, you're only really going to get the benefits if you are going to the gym. Now, there are certain people who say you will build lean muscle even if you don't go to the gym. And it is true, to be honest, but it's a very, very small, unnoticeable amount. Plus, let's say you weren't going to the gym, but you were someone who goes to the gym regularly and you were taking 2 weeks off, maybe it was a holiday or you weren't well or whatever, then you could take Sarms to maintain your muscle mass. So let's say, for example, you couldn't train for a month, you could take Austrine for a month at a standard dosage, so MK2866, and it would help you to maintain and not lose your muscle mass, because Sarms were developed as anti-muscle wastage drugs. So therefore, they're going to support your body and hold on to as much muscle as possible. But obviously, the main reason people are taking them is to build bigger muscles. So first of all, make sure your diet's right. You need to be eating a diet which is high in protein, and if you are bulking, then obviously you need to be in a calorie surplus. If you are cutting, then you need to be in a calorie deficit, but you still need to keep your protein levels high, otherwise your muscles are going to waste away. Obviously not as much if you're taking Sarms, but you're not going to build any muscle if you're not in a surplus, if you're not eating a high protein diet. So just make sure your diet's correct. Your training has got to be correct as well. Like I said earlier, I do get asked a lot, do I need to go to the gym if I'm taking these? Well, I've had lots of people contact me, you know, like I say, I've been doing these videos for years, and it's either they're not doing the right type of training or they're not training at all. So make sure if you want to gain muscle, generally speaking, the simplest way to do it is 10 to 16 reps, 3 to 5 sets. 3 sets if you're a beginner, 5 sets if you're more advanced, 4 could probably just cover anyone. But 10 to 16 reps is what you want, but also those reps need to be hard. Like your last rep needs to be difficult, like the last one you could do. You need to be training to failure. Now that's the most simple way to build lean muscle. So if you're not training like that, you know, I had a guy contact me from America who was taking Sarms and he wasn't gaining muscle. And the reason being because he was doing cardio. So he wasn't losing muscle, but he wasn't training for bigger muscles. So you need to train for bigger muscles and you need to eat for bigger muscles. But also you need to make sure you're resting as well. So once you've got your diet and your training sorted, make sure you're getting to bed early. Make sure you're resting. You know, you're not taking too much caffeine that's affecting your sleep. Nordic Labs does also have a sleep supplement if you are struggling with your sleep. So just be aware of that. You can check it out on our website. I'll put a link below for that. But that's really going to be the 3 main things if you're using Sarms. Now, before we get into a beginner's Sarms cycle, let me just go through a list of frequently asked questions that I get asked about Sarms. Like I say, I'm an expert in Sarms and other performance enhancing supplements. And over the last 8 years of making these videos, I've been asked lots of questions. So I write down a list of my most popular questions. So the first one is, are Sarms legal? It's the most popular question. And the answer is, in the UK, they're not illegal. You know, as long as you're buying them for the purposes of research. So they are research compounds, which means when you're buying them, your contract with the shop is that you understand they're for research purposes only. And that's purely just because that shop, and any shop in the UK, and it's the same in the USA and lots of countries across the world, they've not been approved to sell these for human consumption, but they've been approved to sell them, like a coat or a jacket or something like that, but it's not for human consumption. So therefore, you're doing it for research purposes, and obviously you're buying them because you're doing some research with your lab rat. But obviously, really, we know you're going to be taking them, but that's sort of how the law works across the world, really. But there are certain countries that they are illegal in. So just make sure you do your research. If you're not in the UK or the USA, just Google it. And just make sure you know the legality of these supplements before you order them off the internet. Another really popular question I get is, will I fail a drugs test? Now, generally for most of the population, if you are drugs tested for work, then you won't. They're only going to be looking for the naughty things. I'm not going to explain what they are. I can't really say it on YouTube because you'd get demonetized, but you know what I'm talking about. Those people who put things up the nose, those people who inject things into the veins that have no purpose other than to make them high for a little bit of time and really just to make the dealer loads of money and get you addicted, then those are the drugs that they test for. Sarms, it's very rare that anyone would be trying to detect Sarms in your system unless you are a drugs tested athlete. So for Sarms, you won't fail a drugs test in general. But if you are unsure, because certain armies and certain militaries across the world, they do test for performance enhancing drugs and things like that, well, you can go and get a freedom of information request, or you can Google it and find out what the drugs test is that you'll be taking. Now, they usually come back with a brand name and a panel number. So let's say, let's make it up. Let's say it was Nordic Labs 10 panel test. Well, that means that Nordic Labs are on that test specifically are testing for 10 things. Now, if you Google that, the brand name and the panel number, so it's a Nordic Lab 10 panel test, that doesn't exist, by the way, I've just made it up. Then what you generally get is a result, and that result would say these are the 10 things it's testing for. So a lot of armies, a lot of people have contacted me and said, look, this is the situation. I'm in the army, we get drugs tested. So I've got them to find out what panel test it is, I've got them to Google it, and then they know exactly what they can and can't take. Most employers will have to give you that information. Obviously, militaries will vary from country to country, but generally speaking, you can find that out by doing a bit of Googling yourself. But 99.9% of the population that are drugs tested for work, they're only going to be looking for your party drugs and things like that, so don't worry about it. What time is the best time to take Sarms? Well, the answer is any time, but the morning is best for most people. I would ask yourself, when is it going to be best for you? Have you got other supplements that you take at home, so vitamins and things like that? Can you take them at the same time? Or do you want to be a bit more discreet? Do you want to keep them away from friends or family or your girlfriend or whatever? Then maybe have them at work in your drawer. That might mean that you don't take them at the weekend, and that will affect your performance. But my advice, if you do live with friends, family, parents or whatever, and you don't want people knowing what you're taking, just put them in a vitamins tub or something like that. Something very inconspicuous. That's why it works well to get the tablet form, because nobody knows what they are. They're just plain white tablets most of the time. Just make sure you take the Sarms every day at the same time, preferably, or a similar time every day for the whole duration of your cycle. You don't skip a day. You don't not take them on your day off. You take them every day. What are the long-term side effects from taking Sarms? Well, it's tough to say. Sarms have only been around since about the 80s and 90s. And there's no real long-term studies on Sarms. And it's the same with things like weed. Weed's been illegal for so long that people have not been able to do long-term studies on it. So now it's getting legalized all around the world. A lot of people are asking the questions, what are the long-term health consequences of smoking marijuana? And the answer is we just don't know because we've not been able to study them. And it's very similar with Sarms. There's not been any long-term studies because they've not been rolled out in terms of they've not been prescribed on the NHS or in America for long enough for us to get the data. But think about it like this. You can physically buy paracetamol. so a painkiller or ibuprofen in the shops in most countries. And if you take too much, it can kill you. And that's no joke. You know, there's loads of things you can buy. Alcohol, for example, long-term abuse is going to kill you. That's not really going to be the case with Sarms. The same with anabolic steroids, you know. You can't legally buy in most countries. You can't legally buy anabolic steroids. Some countries you can. But if you buy in the tablet forms, anabolic steroids could kill you long-term. You know, even after about 6 months if you continuously taking too much for too long, because they're liver toxic. Now, most SARMs are not very liver toxic at all. So you could, in theory, continuously run something like Austrine, for example, for a whole year, but you wouldn't want to. And the reason is not because it's liver toxic. So with anabolic steroids, the tablet form, the reason why you only run them for like 8 weeks is because they're liver toxic, and any longer it's dangerous for you. With SARMs, it's generally you stop running them because they stop working after so long, or they don't work as well. So you cycle off them, one, to let your testosterone levels get back to normal. Obviously, you do a PCT as well. But two, because if you run them any longer, you're not going to be getting the results. So you come off it for a bit, you do your PCT, maybe come off them for 6 to 8 weeks after your PCT, and then either you go back on the same thing or you try something different. So although they're not liver toxic, or not that liver toxic compared to anabolic steroids, you still do need to cycle them, and they are still going to suppress your testosterone levels. Not everyone, but most people will get at least a slight amount of testosterone suppression. Can you stack more than one SARM together? Well, the answer is yes. A lot of people stack MK677 with a SARM cycle. It's not a SARM, right? MK677 is not a SARM, and if you didn't know that, well, hey, subscribe to the channel because we're going to do a full video on it. But you can stack actual SARMs together. So you could stack Austrine with LGD, you could stack it with RAD 140. A lot of people do RAD 140 and RAD 150 together, which I'll be doing a video on. But generally speaking, you wouldn't want to, especially as a beginner. I would suggest maybe later on, as you understand SARMs a little bit more, and it, you know, once you get onto your 4th, 5th cycle, maybe start stacking a few things in. But as a beginner, you really just want to be stacking MK677 in with your cycle, 10 to 30 milligrams a day for 12 weeks, or something like Cardarine. You know, if you're an endurance athlete or if you're looking to lose weight, you can put Cardarine in there as well. So with MK677 or instead. Again, you want to be doing 10 to 20, up to 30 at a push milligrams a day of Cardarine. But we'll go through them in different videos, so make sure you subscribe. Now, can you stack SARMs with steroids? Well, the answer is yes, you definitely can. A lot of people stack RAD 140 or RAD 150 with DECA, so nandrolone decanate. Why? Because it helps to keep your gains a little bit drier. You know, a lot of people retain a bit of water on DECA, and RAD 140 is been shown to give you more dry gains. So a lot of people swear by taking RAD 140 with anabolic steroids. Obviously, MK677 and Cardarine, they're not SARMs, but you can take them with anabolic steroids as well. You know, MK677 with any bulking stack, whether it's SARMs or steroids, would be amazing. GW501516, aka Cardarine, is great for powerlifters because it does give you more power, but it's also great for endurance athletes. So yes, you can stack them with it. You could stack Austrine in with an anabolic steroid cycle. You could stack LGD. It's up to you, but don't go overboard. Don't stack 9 anabolic steroid compounds and then 5 SARM compounds together. It doesn't make sense. You know, less is always going to be more. And you want to ask yourself this question: why? Why do I feel the need to add RAD 140 into my cycle? Is it just because it's there? Is it just because I've got money burning a hole in my wallet, in my bank account that I want to spend? Or is there a specific reason? Like, for example, DECA. Are you going to take it because you don't want any bloating? You know, not everyone gets bloated on DECA, but you might take Rad 140 because you want to keep your cycle lean. Fine. As long as you've got a good enough why, then you're probably thinking in the right way. But if you just want to throw loads of things together, I would say less is probably more. Can you continuously run Sarms and never cycle off? Well, the answer is no. There's not enough long-term studies to suggest it would be beneficial, and obviously, like I said previously, they do wear off and they don't work as well the longer you take them. And also, if you are natural in terms of you're not taking any testosterone, you're not on TRT, then it's going to have a negative effect the longer you run Sarms on your own testosterone production. So I would keep your cycles between 8 and 12 weeks. What about on non-training days? Do I still take them? It's a popular question. Yes, you take them every day, preferably at the same time of the day, with a meal, if possible, for the whole duration of your cycle. What is a half-life? Well, the half-life is the amount of time it takes for a compound to naturally leave your body, or at least half of that compound. So if we say the half-life of Austrine is 24 hours, that means after 24 hours, half of that compound has left your body, which makes it ideal for dosing every day, because obviously you take it your first day, then half of it leaves your system, so then you take it the second day, and then only really half of it, of that second dosage, is being used in that second day, plus it's stacked on the half that's still in your system from the previous day. So you've got a full dose in your system on day 2. You could take 2 tablets on day 1 to sort of front load that cycle, but it's not necessary just because the half-life is so short. But if the half-life was longer, so 48 hours, then we would suggest dosing that particular SARM every other day. But a half-life is literally the amount of time it takes for half of that supplement to leave your system, and therefore that's how we gauge how frequently we dose those SARMs. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over what I think is a beginner's SARM cycle for most people. It's what I've been advising for the past 8 years since making videos like this and working in supplement shops, and it's also what's advised across the board. So as a beginner, we're not saying people who've never trained before. A beginner means someone who's probably got a year's worth of training under the belt at least, and they're probably above the age of 25, I would imagine, and they're looking at going onto SARMs because they've hit their natural potential. So they've built as much muscle as they think they can build naturally, and they want to then move on to something else. So Austrine is a very good place to start. Austrine is known as MK2866. We will do a full video on it. And the general dosage of Austrine is going to be 20 to 30 milligrams per day for males every day for 8 to 12 weeks. I recommend 12 weeks as the optimal cycle length, but you can do 8 weeks, and 4 weeks in my opinion is not good enough, because you're only going to start getting good results after about week 4, 5 or 6. It varies from person to person. You can run Austrine at up to 40 milligrams per day, but that would be up to you. Generally that's going to be for the bigger guys or people who have run anabolics before, and women, the dosages is going to be 5 to 15 milligrams per day. Most women, I would say, start at 10 milligrams per day, but if you are smaller or if you've never taken anything before, I would start at 5 milligrams per day for 12 weeks. Now, women don't need to do a PCT, but guys will need to do a PCT. Now, a PCT could be a natural PCT. You know, you've seen your Tomcat Alley, your Fedogia agrestis and things like that. But in my opinion, if you want to do things properly, a proper PCT for a SARM cycle, especially for this beginner SARM cycle, all you need is something called tamoxifen, which is also called Nolvadex in certain countries, and you want 20 milligrams per day for 4 weeks. Girls don't need to do this, it's just the guys. So let's say you did a 12-week cycle of 20 milligrams per day of Austrine. Now remember, that's 20 milligrams every day, not just when you feel like it, not just Monday to Friday, not just training days, every day of your cycle. once a day, preferably the morning, preferably the same time every day. If you're going to do it in the evenings, if that's easier for you, fine. It doesn't matter what time of the day. What matters is that you're consistent, that you take it every day and you try and take it at a similar time every day. Now, once you've completed your 12 weeks, the last tablet you take, so let's say it's a Friday and you take your last tablet or your last 2 tablets or 3, whatever you're taking, then the following day is when you start your PCT. Now, a lot of people might say, probably wait another day for RAD 140. We'll go into that on the RAD 140 video. RAD 150, you might want to wait a couple of more days. Anyway, we'll go into that on the RAD 150 video. But this is all about Austrine. It's a beginner's cycle. So you would start the day after you took your last tablet. And tamoxifen, or Nolvadex, if it's called that in your country, 20 milligrams it usually comes in, 20 milligram tablets, and you just want 1 a day for 4 weeks. Why do we do that? Well, Sarms can cause side effects still. So one of the side effects, the main one to look at, is reduced testosterone. So what's happening is you're taking something in from outside of your body. Your body doesn't know this, but all it knows is that your hormone levels are quite high. And it's assuming it's testosterone. So it tells your balls, your testicles, or what produce testosterone, it tells them to calm down a bit. And as it's doing that throughout your cycle, your testosterone levels are going to dip. So when you come off your cycle, if you don't recover your testosterone levels as quick as possible, then you will lose some, or maybe in certain cases, all of the gains that you got. So if you want to keep your gains, you do a good PCT. So what that's going to do, if your testosterone levels have dipped throughout your cycle, it's going to take about 3 months as a maximum for that testosterone to recover back to where it was. But you can speed that process up, which will allow you to keep more of your gains by doing a PCT. So tamoxifen 20 milligrams per day for 4 weeks should be enough for a beginner's cycle to totally recover your testosterone levels. So what will happen is, instead of waiting 3 months for that testosterone to recover, it's going to start to recover after about a week. And if you continue to take the tamoxifen, it's going to tell your body you need to keep producing that testosterone. And then after those 4 weeks, you should be used to producing a normal level of testosterone. That in turn is going to help you to keep more of the gains that you achieved on your Sarms cycle, and it's going to make sure that you don't get any of the side effects that could be associated with taking Sarms. Obviously, Austrine has the least side effects associated with it. Most people don't get any testosterone suppression on Austrine, but some people do. Some people get a little bit, some people get a lot. And that will be determined by you yourself. We're all different. If your testosterone levels were low to begin with, then you might want to get your testosterone levels checked before you start doing anything like this. But if your testosterone levels are high, or at least you think they're high, you've got high sex drive, you've been able to build lean muscle mass, you're not tired all the time, you feel good, then that means your testosterone levels will probably be healthy. But it is a good idea to get your testosterone levels checked before, during, and after a cycle. But like I say, most people aren't going to do that. So go with your gut feeling. If your testosterone levels are low, this could make it worse. But if you're going to do a PCT, then you should be fine. Just make sure you do a proper PCT. But my advice is, if you do think your testosterone levels are low, go and see a doctor. They'll help you to sort it out. They'll put you on TRT, which might be more beneficial for you than Sarms short term. But then also, once you're on this doctor prescribed TRT, which is testosterone, then you could add in Sarms, and because you're taking TRT, you don't need to do a PCT like the girls. So girls don't need to do a PCT, and anyone who's on TRT or is in control of their own testosterone, i.e. by injecting it, they don't need to do a PCT either. So if you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and if you want to continue to do your research in the world of Sarms and other performance enhancing supplements, then make sure you subscribe to the Nordic Labs YouTube channel, and we will see you next time for another video.